All right, so I waited to tape my podcast on Tuesday until a little later because I felt like something was going down today, but I thought it was going to be a trade. And then Terry Rozier and Kyle Lowry, that trade happens. I'm like, okay, that's good enough. We'll get that going, little Lakers Clippers tonight. And then Adrian Griffin gets fired out of nowhere. And I'm doing a documentary shoot that all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up. 43 games. And then Kevin O'Connor, Joe House are here. I went from being like, holy shit, I can't believe they, and then the Doc Rivers stuff started. And I was like, oh my God, Doc's only been on this podcast 5 times. I love having Doc Rivers. It's been so much fun. You're taking Doc Rivers from me? KOC, help explain any of this to us.
I mean, I'm mostly disappointed that Doc is going to be ripped away from you. He's been great this year. It's too bad. But look, I think for the Bucks, this has been going on a long time with them. Like it first started before the season. Terry Stotts gets berated. He walks away from the team. Earlier in the season, 4 games in, the Bucks veterans asked Griffin to change the defensive scheme back to having Brook Lopez and drop. They were playing a very aggressive scheme that resembled what the Raptors were doing, where Griffin was an assistant in recent years. So they go back to dropping with Brook Lopez, but everything else is pretty much the same. Giannis and Portis are switching on-ball screens more than they ever have. They're playing aggressive. Their pick-up point on ball handlers is higher than it was before. And by pulling these, bigger defenders, Giannis, Portis, away from the paint, they are giving up more offensive rebounds than ever before. They're allowing more at-rim chances than ever before. And I know, like, the counter argument to all of the defense.
Wait, hold on, KFC. You're not seeing the forest through the trees here. We saw it in Vegas, and we both did podcasts when we were there, and we were like, something's off with this team. It wasn't just the defensive stuff. It seemed like Giannis was out, and we were sitting there watching it going, what's going on? Why isn't he in the huddle? Waz and I talked about it that night. We're like, something is wrong. What is it? So you think it was all the defensive stuff, or was it more than that?
I mean, I think the tactical side of things is what played into the lack of trust and belief in him.
Yeah.
I think for the team, we saw earlier in the year where Giannis, or maybe it was Griffin after a game, admitted that Giannis changed the play call that he made. We saw Giannis early in the season refuse to sub out of a game. And I think early in the year,
was problematic.
All, tactical driven decisions, the system changes that were made that made the team say, wait a minute here, like, what are we doing? We were just a dominant defense for 5 straight years. We had no issues allowing at-rim chances, and now everything's changing all of a sudden. So I think
but KOC, one of the reasons they were a dominant defense was because they had Drew Holiday on their team and not Dame Lillard. House, we talked about this when we did over-unders. It's like, cool, Dame Lillard, good end of the game guy, 25 to 30 points a game. Couldn't guard us. So are you surprised that it went this bad this fast, or did you think this was an after the season thing?
Well, I do think that Dame probably could guard us. I do think that. But
you just got your hip replaced, so maybe
and some other parts. But look, I will say this. When you have the kind of expression of lack of confidence so early on. I mean, KOC was running through the litany of questionable team commitment, and Bobby Portis called the coach out during the in-game tournament. Like after that, like that was December. You can't call the brand new coach out. So there was definitely something in terms of that relationship between the coach. He failed the most important task, the number one task upon arrival: get buy-in, get the guys on your side.
And then he fires Terry Stotts, or Terry Stotts leaves, or whatever happened. I guess Terry Stotts decided to exit stage right before the season even started. And Dame was clearly bummed out about that. Giannis was clearly bummed out about all the Griffin defensive stuff. So we didn't even start the season and people are upset.
Right. Yeah. So here we are.
Well, here's my take, guys. I think yet again, we have learned that maybe NBA players, especially NBA players like under 30 years old, might not be the best guys to decide who should be on the team and who should be coaching it. because Giannis, they push out Coach Bud. I don't know who was responsible for that, but I don't think you run decisions like that without running it through your superstar. And then the Dame trade was the other one where Giannis wouldn't sign the extension until they did something. You got to do something. So they do this Dame trade. And you look at what Miami gave up for Rozier today. I'm not saying Rozier is better than Dame, but they gave up, 25% of what they were ready to give up for Dame. They got to keep Jaquez. They got to keep other first-round picks. And they end up with Rozier, who's going to give them 80% of the offensive production at Dame, better defense, and they still have all these other assets to do stuff. So I think with Giannis, sometimes superstars in the NBA can become too powerful. And I wonder, like, in this case, were they so afraid of losing him that leads to decision A, decision B, decision C, and now they're basically reset butting it. I don't think you could bring in any coach, and I don't think it's going to fix some of the defensive stuff. Do you think KOC? I mean, Dame's been one of the worst defensive players in the league for the last couple of years out of all the starters, right?
I mean, that's where I disagree, though. I think with Drew Holiday, if he were still on this team, the Bucks would be worse. One of the reasons why they have a record as good as they do is because Giannis has dragged them to some victories. Dame has made heroic shots in end of games like he did earlier this month with that overtime logo 3 against the Kings. Right. Like those guys, Giannis and Dame, have just overcome some of the issues they've had. And so like with
So you would say Dame has too? I know they've stolen some games at the end, but I think for the most part, he's been pretty hit or miss. Like he's had a bunch of 3 for 17s, 4 for 16s. He's gotten lit up by, I mean, Indiana, that's like, they have the Milwaukee game circled on their calendar because it's so much fun for Halliburton. So I don't know. I feel on the one hand, like, I see what you're saying, but on the other hand, it's like, all right, well, you do have Giannis and he's been healthy the whole year. You're probably going to have around this record anyway.
I just don't think Drew Holiday is solving all of the defensive issues they have. Like, yes, he'd help at the point of attack. That's for sure. They've struggled with Dame. Dame isn't has never been a stopper. He's not even hustling back on defense enough. Malik Beasley is worse than Grayson Allen for that matter. And Pat Connaughton has not been productive this year. So their point of attack defense is weak, but because their point of attack defense is weak, the way they're playing by pulling Giannis and Bobby Portis away from the rim, the way they intended on having Brook Lopez away from the rim earlier in the season, it has created a situation where they don't have as much size inside to stop that penetration that's occurring. They don't have as much size inside to get defensive rebounds. They're worse this year than they've ever been under Bud. So I think for the Bucks, it's all of these things combined. And yes, Drew Holiday would help, but he wouldn't be the complete cure for their issues.
House, you can't say it's just Drew Holiday, though, because it's Drew Holiday. It's Grayson Allen, who's been, I wasn't a fan heading into the season, but he has been one of the best three-point shooters in the league this year, plus the other assets that they gave up, which crippled them. So now they have nothing they can trade. I mean, they can't really move any of their first-round picks. So I guess the question is, House, would you still do the Dame trade? Or would you rather have Drew Holiday, Grayson Allen, whatever else they gave up, all the picks and the flexibility to maybe go get Terry Rozier, to maybe get some of the pieces that are going to be available in February? Because I was on the record when it happened. I didn't like the Dame trade. And I thought people were really underestimating his defense. So where do you stand 43 games in?
I like the Dame trade, and I think it still has a very good chance of proving out. We are going to have that referendum now, right? We're 41 games in, 43 games in. Now we're going to see, because to KOC's point, this team lost a core concept, a core identity. They're 25th in opponent points in the paint this season. They were 13th in that category last year. They're 23rd in opponent fast break points. They were 8th in that category last year. So teams, they can't protect the paint, and teams are getting out and running on them. And that is a function of scheme. There is some kind of mismatch going on there between the personnel that they have and what Griffin was trying to do. So we expect that Doc will come in, be a stabilizing influence, and figure out a way. If it's Doc, sure, we'll keep using that caveat until it becomes Doc. But look, we're gonna figure it out. The thing that we knew for sure, and I do give the Bucks credit for this, this team was going nowhere in the playoffs. This version, playing the way that they were playing, we didn't need to see any more games, and they didn't either. It's why they were going to practices. You know, the report was that Mark Spears was saying, the front office was showing up at practice the last 2 weeks to on the floor. Chris Haynes. It was Chris Haynes. On the floor, watching Griffin conduct these practices. They're like, you know what? We're not going anywhere in the playoffs with this iteration. We must do something different. I still wonder if there isn't they need a body. They still need a body to my way of thinking. And it's got to be
there's this new rule that with the signing buyout guys, that if they make over $12.4 million, you can't, if you're over those aprons, you can't even sign. I didn't even know about that rule today, but so Kelly Olynyk's at like 12.2. He's kind of, it should almost call it the Kelly Olynyk, whatever. House, you say all that. Milwaukee Bucks on FanDuel right now, plus 220 to win the conference. Are you taking that? Yeah, thumbs down. That's what I thought.
Not even close.